Colette Killworth, welcome to Marketing Girly.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Colette works as the director of PR and influencer marketing at ColourPop, so she's got quite a fun, interesting career journey into beauty marketing, which I'm very excited to jump into. But
Yeah.
before we get into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I'm Colette. I have been in the beauty industry pretty much my entire career. I always knew that I wanted to work in like a fun marketing job, like beauty, fashion, whatever. Like if you had asked me when I was 12 what I wanted to do, and like seeing what I'm doing now, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But I've basically been in that industry since I graduated with like a brief stint in some other industries that kind of secured that I wanted to be in beauty. But yeah, I graduated in 2016 from Cal State Long Beach after doing lots of internships to help me kind of figure out where I wanted to be. And I've been in the industry ever since.
What made you want to work in the beauty industry?
So I actually didn't even think about the beauty industry. At first, I wanted like fashion, the quintessential like editor job that was in every like 2000s movie when you were little. So I majored in journalism and I minored in marketing, and I kind of always thought I was going to be like an editorial assistant or go into more like fashion editorial. But while I was in college, I was just doing all these internships and networking, and the beauty industry kind of like fell into my lap. I met someone who worked at Too Faced while I was in college, and she was like in the same sorority as me, but was older. And so we just stayed in touch, and an internship opened up, and I was like, sure, let's try the beauty industry.
That's amazing. And you worked in the beauty industry for thinking back to when you graduated all the way up until now.
Mm-hmm.
What have been what's been your favorite part about working in that space?
It's so much fun. And I think that I've always worked at like smaller brands, or they were small at the time that I worked there. And you really get to see the fruit of your labor, which is really fun. Not in every position I've ever had, but a lot of them. And we can talk more about that. It's kind of the difference between agency and house and the type of brand that you're working at. But it's so much fun. You get to see the fruits of your labor. And it's not that serious. And I think that is so refreshing to know that at the end of the day, we are making people's lives more enjoyable. We're selling makeup. People love makeup, but it will be okay if your worst day happens. So it's relaxing in that way.
I remember seeing, I think it's like some meme on TikTok that was like, I work in marketing, it's not that serious. Or just kind of, obviously the work is important, but I
Totally.
feel like it is also supposed to be fun. And sometimes I think it's just like a good reminder of that, like to bring that lightheartedness to what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not that serious. It's so much fun. And not to say I don't care about my job, because I do. I love what I do. But everything is going to be okay at the end of the day. And that's really refreshing and allows me to enjoy it almost more freely.
Yeah, yeah. And so you lead PR and influencer marketing. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that entails?
Yes. So at ColourPop specifically, I lead PR, I lead influencer, events falls under us as well. And we also don't really have a traditional marketing team. So anything that's kind of awareness based falls under me. So the PR side is like traditional pitching and PR. So I have someone under me and we work on that together, where it's drafting press releases and pitching out stories and talking with editors and making sure they know about our products and the brand and crafting business stories. The influencer side is making sure that we have a growing influencer community and that they're talking about us. They're getting the latest products and we're fitting into those conversations. And then the event piece falls into both of those together, whether it's an influencer event, a PR event, or in this day, like a TikTok shop event, we would help with that as well. And then anything else awareness. So we've done pop-ups that are more community-based. That tends to fall under my team as well. We did a partnership with Dialogue, which is in LA, and we did a custom smoothie. And so that fell under my team. So kind of anything upper funnel typically will fall under me.
Okay, so lots of things.
Lots of things.
Lots of fun things. So I want to break down your role just a little bit because I think it's one of my missions with Marketing Girly is always to kind of share what these roles look like for somebody who might aspire to have that one day. So I want to talk about influencer strategy for a little bit. So you part of your role involves working on influencer strategies for getting competitive EMV. Can you talk a little bit about earned media value and how influencer marketing plays a role into that?
Totally. And I think that's a really great thing to talk about. And I think it's really helpful to anyone that's interviewing for influencer marketing roles. At ColourPop specifically, our founder even cares a lot about what we call EMB, which is earned media value. And that term can differ depending on the platform that's talking about it. It's essentially the same, but the exact metric and way they pull that number can change. But EMV that I work towards is dictated by Tribe Dynamics Creator IQ, which is a very well-known platform that people use to track their influencer efforts. And they always publish a top 10 at the end of the month of the top 10 in certain indexes. So like the beauty landscape will have a top 10 and the highest EMV is number 1 to the lowest EMV is, well, not the lowest, but number 10, which would be the lowest within that rank of 10. And so at ColourPop, we focus a lot on efforts that will keep us in that share of voice and that top 10 ranking. But that's specific to our brand. That's what we care about. And it makes a lot of sense because it's a way to add a KPI to influencer marketing, which can be notoriously very hard to track and prove the ROI and revenue of. I think there are ways to do that now that are a little bit more nuanced, but it was just an easy way to dial in, like, we did this, we got this much EMV, that's what's equal, and we can assume that will equal X amount of revenue or something like that. But not every brand's like that. Some brands care more about potential reach, which would be like, you pay someone to do an ad on TikTok and the potential reach is their entire following. It really depends where you work at. I've done, when I was at agency, I worked with L'Oreal and they cared more about a lot of individual metrics versus EMV. So just a little bit into that. It depends the brand you're working with. I think if you're interviewing for a role, it's always good to ask that up front. Like, what do they see as success? What is the goal in their marketing so that you can tailor what you're talking about and what your approach would be to how you would achieve that metric.
That's a great actionable tip. I love
Yeah.
that. So how does having EMV as a top KPI that you're tracking influence how you approach influencer marketing?
Yeah. So it's a little bit tough in a lot of ways because we have to make sure everything we're doing is going to drive EMV. So if we're working with, a ton of micro creators, that's not going to drive a ton of EMV because they're so much smaller. We still do that and we still make sure that's layered into our approach. But if our goal is ultimately, like, we really want to get as high as we can in the top 10, we want to make sure that all of our strategies are ultimately laddering up to as much EMV as possible. So, that involves creating relationships and maintaining relationships with creators that drive a lot of EMV and post a lot of content. We have a lot of really great creators that post about us consistently, like many, many, many times a month. And they have really high EMV per post. So that really helps in that respect. But with that said, I don't think EMV is the end all be all metric. It's just a matter of making sure that, at the end of the day, this is what the founder and the board wants to see. So we're going to do whatever we can to get as much EMV as possible, but we're not going to neglect our micro creators. We're not going to say anything that's not driving millions of EMV isn't worth it. It's just a balance.
And what goes into an influencer's EMV calculation? Is it just their reach, their followers, their engagement? Is it a combination of all of those?
It's a combination and it's like a proprietary metric depending on what platform is pulling it. So Creator IQ and Tribe Dynamics, they have a specific calculation of how they decide how much EMV a post is worth. But if you go to a platform like Tracker or Grin, which are other influencer marketing platforms, they'll also have some form of, I think Tracker calls it VIT, but like Grin calls it EMV or Shop My calls it EMV, but it's not going to be the exact same calculation as Tribe. So it's a little bit nuanced.
Okay. But it's some combination of kind of those big three metrics.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, so interesting to hear. Is there maybe a favorite campaign you've done with influencers that comes to mind that you've done while you worked with at ColourPop?
There's so many things. I think my background's in events. I started my career as an events assistant. And so events are very near and dear to me. And I think they play so strongly in influencer space. And I know a lot of consumers don't always love seeing influencer events, but from an influencer marketing and strategy perspective, they can be so efficient in so many ways because they can drive a lot of EMV. If you have these really strong EMV drivers there and they're posting over and over, like we've done events for National Lipstick Day in the past, we've done a couple of them, and they've driven like $6 million of EMV, which is a lot. But at the same time, it allows us to build these relationships with these creators that allows us to maintain our strategy onward, where they think of the brand more fondly. They get to know you. You get to learn what they like. They talk about what they want to see from the brand and what would be interesting to them. So anything events is always really fun to me for that respect for, I guess 3 reasons. 1, the relationship aspect. 2, you can storytell really well through events. 3, they can drive a lot of EMV. So I guess I can speak to our National Lipstick Day events where National Lipstick Day is in July. And a couple of years ago, we did our first brand trip ever. We went to the Hamptons and we brought a lot of really fun creators. It was like Emily Kaiser, Whitney Simmons, Acquired Style, and there were many others too. What was really fun about it is there were also people on that trip you would never expect to be with that group of people. Like there's this creator called May Pang. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she does these beautiful like artistry looks. And you would never expect like her and Emily Kaiser to be in the same room. But that was what was fun about it. Like all of the comments were like, whoa, not on my bingo card, like expecting to see those people in the same room. So really fun to get to bring those to people and talk about the brand. And I think that's another way to storytell about the brand, especially ColourPop. Like it's not just for the artistry girls, and the clean girls and the minimal makeup girls can still love the products because we have thousands and it's so accessible and affordable. So I think those events have been kind of the most fun because you get to bring those people together and storytell the brand.
Yes. Okay. Well, that was going to be my next question, was that you did one of the first influencer events at ColourPop. So
Yes.
I'm glad that we got there. Can you, and I know you mentioned that or I don't know if you just mentioned or if I pulled this, but you generated over 6 million in EMV in a week from that, which is incredible. What was it like putting together one of the first big events for the brand? Because I'm sure you kind of had to figure things out for the very first time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how to answer that question. There's a lot of things that ride on it. One, in the role, you're advocating that this is going to be effective, right? So it's a little nerve-wracking because you're going to leadership and saying, hey, I want to do this event and I'm going to spend a decent amount of money on it because events are expensive. And I think we'll drive a lot of EMV. Obviously, I don't know because
we've never done
it's not
before.
A paid campaign.
Yeah.
And I can't absolutely guarantee they're going to post and they're going to post this many times. We've never done it before. So it's really just advocating for what you think is going to work. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking to make sure that you can execute on the strategy in a way that is showcased to your leadership and the people that are ultimately telling you yes or no. But it's so fulfilling and satisfying at the end of the day. And I think this ties back to what I was saying earlier about what I love is you get to see the fruits of your labor. So you plan an event for 4 months and you're negotiating with the venue, you're talking with all these vendors, you're talking about what the flowers are going to look like, and you're planning out the run of show. And then to see it come together in real life and see people genuinely enjoying it and seeing that content going live is so fulfilling at the end of the day. So yeah.
Amazing. And kind of tying this back into what you mentioned about storytelling and relationship building, which I imagine is so crucial. I know when it comes to influencer marketing, especially when I feel like brands are, competing with the same influencers, working with a lot of overlapping influencers. Any advice for somebody working in influencer marketing on the relationship building side of things? Because I do feel like that's when, for us, as consumers, feel like a brand trip is really special, or we see an influencer work with a brand and it feels really authentic. And I feel like I know ColourPop is a brand that does it really well. So is
Yeah.
there any tips there for any influencer marketers who are working on trying to build more of those authentic relationships?
Yeah, I think my first thing would be pay attention to who your authentic influencers are, like who's already talking about you and who's genuinely using the product, because the customer is savvy and they will see through a partnership that doesn't make sense and isn't organic on its own. So at the core, remember who your brand is, remember who's genuinely talking about you, and keep them at the center of the conversation because they're going to story tell the best for you. And then second, it sounds obvious, but maintaining relationships and having those relationships is an essential part of the job. I think it's easy to boil it down to project management and sending out mailers and building lists and, the nitty gritty of the day to day. But I'm always telling my team, like, go get coffee with influencers, set up coffee dates, do it over Zoom, whatever it is, because the relationship piece is something that AI can never take over. It's something that other brands may not have, and not to say they don't have relationship building as well, but that's how you can stand out.
Yeah.
So just never letting that part be on the side. And additionally, always sourcing new creators and building new relationships. Because even though I mentioned pay attention to who your authentic creator is, you can always grow that as well and find new creators who you can introduce the products to, but do it in a way that's authentic and genuine. I would never do that with a paid partnership. If someone's never spoken about us before, I probably wouldn't send them a product and pay them $70,000 to talk about it, because it's never going to land. So really using all those things together and merging them as part of your strategy.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think, because AI is, I think, on the top of mind for all of us. You can't look at the news without
Yeah.
seeing something about AI. And I really thought about it a lot in terms of like my brand, Sky Society, like how am I making sure that as I think to the future, like we are going to be able to still succeed in a world that's probably going to look a lot different. Marketing's probably going to look a lot different. And the one thing that I keep going back to is the power of community and relationship building, because
Yeah.
as amazing as AI can get, there is nothing that's gonna really be able to replace that, the community, the relationships that you have with other people. And I feel like it's maybe not a new thing that we know, like brands that do really well do a good job at that, but I just think it's going to become even more important in influence marketing in all areas of marketing.
Yeah, I think you can use it as a tool, use it as a resource. Like a lot of our influencer platforms have introduced like AI agents to the platform that are supposed to help you with sourcing and whatever that is. And that's totally fine if it can help you build your list more efficiently, but it's can't, at least now, maybe in 10 years it can, but it can't replace the entire 360 aspect of the job. And there's so much of that. And I think on top of that, it's being an influencer marketer right now, you have to be so savvy and so quick and so in the know and in the weeds. And so it's really, I think that's a human aspect that a lot of robots wouldn't be able to have.
Yeah, and that's like a great example of AI being able to take and optimize one part of the job, but then that makes, it's not going to be able to go take your influencer out to coffee.
Exactly. And tell them about the brand in an authentic way and recommend products. And, maybe
Connect
it
with
can
them.
one day, but right now that's where we shine.
Unless we'll see them with like a Tesla robot.
Oh my God. I'm scared.
Okay, amazing. So the other thing I also wanted to touch on with your role is the PR aspect. So there's a lot that goes in there. One of the highlights from your current role was landing WWD placement covering the brand's launch in Target. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh, that was actually so tricky. I'm trying to think back. So part of that strategy was we really wanted sort of like a dual strategy. We wanted the business outlets to cover it, but we wanted the consumer outlets to cover it. And for anyone that doesn't know, a business outlet would be like a WWD or a Glossy or a Business of Fashion, whereas a consumer outlet is going to be more like Pop Sugar, Vogue, Teen Vogue, rest in peace, or something like that. And so the strategy with that, not launch, I guess you could call it launch in Target, was to have both sides of that spectrum. We ended up choosing WWD, and it was actually a bit of a tricky thing to navigate because the first launch in Target was limited edition, and there was going to be a full inline collection coming later, but it hadn't been announced yet. And so we were going back and forth with them on whether it was relevant and timely and newsworthy to talk about a limited life collection. And we were really excited to have this exclusive nailed down. And then we had to kind of pivot and work with them to make sure that we could still do it once we realized it was limited edition, and not me realized, but as a team, we all realized. And so it was a little bit of back and forth, but we ended up getting that live, and it was very fulfilling and very exciting. And I think that's part of the job as well, is knowing what's relevant, knowing what's timely, and working with your editor to make sure that you're fitting their needs as well, because ultimately it's their outlet and their consumer, and they have to speak to what's going to work for them. So kind of playing that storytelling game together.
And how about, I'm not sure if this is something that you started to think about yet, but I know, thinking about talking about AI a little bit more, what AI pulls from is PR a lot. Like, I know it's pulling from a lot of like those types of news outlet placements. I think I remember seeing some chart of like what it's pulling from. It's pulling from like community forums, like Reddit. It's pulling from social, your website. But that's one piece. Is that something that you are actively thinking about, and the importance that plays in terms of like maybe instead of Googling something, we're chat GPTing or going to AI, and that those PR placements play a big role in what AI tells us?
That's a really great point. It's something that is definitely top of mind, but not something we've cracked yet, because I think that there's so much to that conversation. Obviously, PR has always been really important for SEO purposes, but now SEO is, translated to within AI, and even like TikTok. And I was just at a conference this week, and I don't remember the exact stat, but I want to say, I could be butchering this, but it was something like this. Like 80% of Gen Z uses TikTok as a search engine versus Google.
I actually share that stat in our accelerator because it's
oh my gosh,
crazy.
It's crazy. And that's kind of what I mean when I say being an influencer and being in this role, you have to be savvy and on your toes, because these things, this was not our reality 2 years ago. And so it's kind of fun because no one is an expert in that just yet. Well, I'm sure there are some people, but it's not like there's people that have been doing that for 10 years. We're all learning as we go. So long-winded answer to your question is it's top of mind as this really larger strategy as it relates to social media SEO, as it relates to ChatGPT and AI SEO, as it relates to just traditional SEO, and just figuring out how you play into all of that. We haven't cracked the code yet, but I think it will be fun to figure out how to crack it.
I'm so glad you brought up the SEO piece, because I've also just been like nerding out about that a little bit, because I think it's so interesting. And so as I said, we have an accelerator, and we actually just taught the SEO lesson last week, and I asked all of the girls, how many of you prefer TikTok over Google? And everybody raised their hand.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to think about. And it's not like right now, if I want to go do SEO research, I can go to SEMrush. I'm sure the agencies you pull from have a bunch of platforms where they can very much clearly see how this PR placement impacted SEO, but there really aren't those tools for TikTok yet. They're very rudimentary, and they're within the platform. And so it is a little bit like, okay, we're all kind of guessing here a little bit. Like, we know that it works and we have these strategies, but we don't exactly know yet. So it's just really interesting, because I feel like, at least for me in the past, it's like, oh, I know social media when it launched, it had big impact, and we get to see these other things. But now if you're listening to this episode, like, you're getting to live the change, which is crazy.
It's like the evolution of how social media and community is influencing buyer behavior. And even at this conference this week, there were I don't have the specific stats, but they were saying like likelihood of purchasing if it's like recommended in the comments, like likelihood of repeat purchasing if it's recommended in the comments. And I think that even plays into your community management strategy. Like we are always sending TikToks in like our social Slack and being like, can people engage with this? People are asking questions about our product. And it's all merging all of these different departments, like whether it's social, whether it's e-com for TikTok shop, whether it's influencer, whatever it is, it's all part of the same strategy now. And it's a little bit hard to navigate.
Yeah, but exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting.
Yeah, something very new. Okay, amazing. Anything else about your role that you feel like the listeners should know?
Trying to think. I think I would say, and this is more advice than about my role specifically, but I think as an influencer marketer or someone in like an awareness position like mine is figure out like what your edge is. For me, I always say that there's two things I always say. I say that I am creative, but I can execute. So I can come up with like a really fun idea and I can execute it. And I think some people are really good executors, some people are really good creatives. And I think one of my strengths is that I can do both. And then another thing I always mention is that because I have this journalism and PR background, the brand story and storytelling is at the heart of anything I focus on. So the community that we build, how we talk to that community, the events we put on, I always am thinking like, how is this relevant to the brand and like what we're trying to say? And so with that, as an influencer marketer, figure out like what it is your strength is and your skill set is, because I think that will help land you in any position that you're going to, being able to speak to, yeah, I can like build influencer lists and take people to coffee and send out mailers, but I also can do this and this is why it's unique.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. And knowing your strengths, I would also say can sometimes be a hard thing to figure out what you're really good at. So the advice I always give is ask the people around you what they think your strengths are. Because I think sometimes it might be hard or you might just even feel shy with yourself being like, what are my strengths or what are they? But I think a great place to start is ask people around you. But that helps, just like with the product, how every product needs to have a competitive advantage. You also need to have your own competitive advantage and be able to sell other people on that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, I love it. All right, let's rewind the clock a little bit. And you obviously got an incredible career built for yourself and are at ColourPop right now in beauty marketing. But you mentioned earlier that you started at Too Faced as kind of like the launch of your marketing career. Can you take me back to that experience of starting at Too Faced Cosmetics as an event production intern, and then by the time you left, you were an event specialist?
Yeah. I'm actually going to rewind it a little bit more because I feel like this is helpful to people that are interested in getting in this field. Like I mentioned earlier, I always knew I wanted to do something like this. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew I was going to be in like some sort of like creative marketing or fashion or whatever element. So when I was in college, I interned. My first internship was at a fashion PR firm. It's still out there in the world, and I think they do beauty as well. It's called BPCM, and I was like one of 30 interns and like every day, like there were literally so many interns there. And that was my first internship. It was so nitty gritty. It was like pulling samples, pulling clippings, because at the time it was like literally like cutting them and like scanning them into whatever file folder. But that was my first internship. And then after that, I realized I didn't think I wanted to be in fashion specifically or at an agency specifically, but I was so young, I was still figuring it out. And then from there, I went to more of what they were calling like a digital PR agency. And I was actually doing social media and like writing captions and things like that, which I really enjoyed. And so that was my second internship. And then from there, I went to Too Faced as an intern, and I got that internship through, like I mentioned, a connection. And I'd never seen myself in events. I didn't think I'd be good at events. I remember like being offered this internship and talking to my mom being like, I don't even know if I'm going to be good at this. Like, I feel like I'm not going to be good at it. But I was an intern. So I was like, I'm going to take whatever is being thrown at me and figure it out. So I took that internship, and it was luckily my last semester of college. So it worked out like really nicely with timing. And going into that internship, I told them my goal is to be hired on full time. Like, I want to work here when I graduate. And so throughout the entire internship, everything I did was in the intention of like, I'm trying to get them to hire me when I'm done.
I love that you told them. So you were very clear about that. Like, I really want to work here full time.
Yeah.
That's
in my
amazing.
interview, I was like, is there room for growth beyond this role? And they said yes. And so it was really nice to know that going into it, because I was able to keep that top of mind throughout the entire internship. So yeah, I ended up getting hired on full time just in time to graduate. It was a really like lovely scenario. Like, I got the offer in May. I went on like a trip to Europe for a few weeks. I came back and started.
Incredible.
It was so exactly what I would have wanted at the time. So then I started as an events assistant. And throughout my time there, I grew from being an assistant to a coordinator to a specialist. And at the time, I was really focused on a lot of social and PR events, and some trade events and retail events too. So like, if anyone's ever heard of Ulta FLC, which is like a leadership conference for Ulta managers, I was part of the team that figured out what the booth was going to look like and worked with the production teams to bring it to life. I helped put on our like blogger summits at the time, any press events that we did, our like Coachella activation in like 2017. So I really was like in the weeds. Like, I was on the ground steaming linens. I was like doing all of the grunt work, but I think it was so helpful and so fun. But I ultimately decided when it was my time to leave that I wanted to leave because I wanted more experience on the strategy side, because I was really executing at that point. But I wanted to be more involved in like, why are we doing this event? What are we going to do? And what's it going to look like, versus building the look and feel out and making it come to life.
Versus the production side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want to go into the strategy planning, but now you have all of this experience, which
Yep.
I'm sure allowed you to make that transition a bit easier.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, because I've produced so many events that I have a really hard time letting other people do them, because I know all of the things and how much work goes into it and all of the details that are easy to get missed. So even now in my role, I still hold a lot of that, because I'm like, I just know how to do it. But anyway, that is where I left at Too Faced.
Okay, so by that point, you knew that you wanted to move on to the strategy side, and that's kind of where you shifted over to the agency side as well.
Yes.
So tell me about the stint there and kind of what you noticed between agency and then versus working in-house within beauty.
Yeah. So I actually went to an agency that was not beauty, and I wasn't there that long, but it was focused on tech and automotive, and it was actually, no, I did events there too. I did events and traditional PR. So I had a lot of clients that were like mobile operators helping make 5G real, and like Sprint Business, and like just anything in that realm. And I did a mix of helping execute events for them, so like press conferences and things like that, but also doing their pitching. So literally just pitching out stories about tech and automotive to like Forbes and all of those like very techy businessy outlets. I got really good at sharpening my storytelling skills and helping to figure out how to tell stories and what's relevant and what's timely. And even though I really did not like working in tech and automotive, I think it helped me get better at it, because I had to figure it out. Like, I had these clients that I had to pitch these stories about and land placements. And even though it's not my bread and butter, the tech and automotive space, I had to figure it out. I had to learn what was relevant and timely about them and still do it. So it was good. I ended up being successful in that role between events and writing the stories and press releases and ghostwriting and all of that. But ultimately, I wanted to go back to beauty. And so I'm sure this is your next question, but then I went to another agency where I was focused on beauty. But between that, it was during COVID, and I had a brief stint where I was really trying to get back into beauty, but I wasn't back in it yet. And so I spent some time freelancing.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that because I have just even seeing it with my own friends. Freelancing is such a great way to build experience, to build extra money for yourself. And I imagine at this time in your career, because you wanted to be somewhere where you currently were, freelancing, like you mentioned, was a way for you to get that experience to help you then make that transition. So, any advice for marketing girlies that are listening that want to start freelancing? Like, how did you start? What did you do? Any tips you can share there?
Yeah. So I took on freelancing as sort of a means to an end while I landed the next role I wanted, knowing I wanted to work in beauty and knowing that I wanted to, kind of have a hybrid of all the roles I had had before and not really settle. I was able to freelance in the meantime just to make sure that I was still making money, but I wasn't sacrificing what I wanted to do. So I got so in the weeds. At first, I started by finding local businesses to freelance for because I knew that there's so many like restaurants and, hair salons and whatever that don't have a person dedicated to making people know about them and know about their social media and building that brand awareness for them. And so at the time, that's where I started. I started reaching out to local
Interesting.
businesses.
I love that.
Yeah. And actually, while I was in college, I used to work at a hair salon. And so I still had a relationship with them. And so I came back and I handled their social media for a few years, which I think also helped with the beauty aspect because I was able to kind of like build my resume, I guess, and being able to talk the talk of like the hair space and the beauty space. But yeah, I just reached out to a bunch of local businesses and just pitched myself as like, I think you could have more customers. I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not capitalizing on your marketing efforts. This is what I would do. And started working with them. And I had a range of clients. I did like a couple of restaurants. I did a hair salon, well, 2 hair salons. And I even worked with like a staffing firm to help with like LinkedIn ghostwriting. And I
Interesting.
did all of that while I interviewed and landed my next role.
I just think such a great story because I think that's something you can do no matter where you are. Like starting with local businesses is such, I think, an approachable goal. I feel like sometimes when we think about influence or about doing freelance and okay, I have to go pitch these big companies and figure
Yeah.
out which also I know a lot of girls that do that well and that's a great place too. But I think all of us can go be like, okay, well I drive past this hair salon all the time and I don't think they don't really have a social presence and I can go walk in there or I can DM them and I can pitch myself. I think is such a great
Yeah.
place to start.
And you can grow from there too. Like for me, it was like, I just need to I want to be stimulated and busy. So outside of, just wanting to make money, I just wanted to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, just start where you can and you'll get a few clients and then that can turn into more. And even from that experience, I still get recommended to people all the time just through those connections, even though I'm not freelancing for local businesses anymore. But I do still keep my opportunities open for freelancing as well.
I also think my friends that do freelancing, that's how they get their business too, is just like, yeah, people just start to recommend you and you never know when they're going to be in conversation and be like, oh yeah, I know somebody who did this or I have somebody who helped
Totally.
me with this in the past. And getting the first client's probably the hardest. But then once you kind of start to build your portfolio a little bit, then a lot of that growth, if you're doing a good job, can come from word of mouth.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So you kind of get this agency and freelance experience. And obviously, we know the ending, not the ending to the story, but where you are now is you go back in house in beauty. So did those experiences kind of like reignite your love for working in house? What did you kind of learn about yourself through the agency and freelance experience?
Yeah. So after freelancing, well, this is a really great tip for people, but I'll get to that. I went to an agency and we focused on beauty clients, which is exactly what I wanted to do. And I was a PR and influencer manager. We worked for a lot of L'Oreal brands. So some of my clients were like Biolage, Redken, La Roche-Posay, Kiehl's, Maybelline, L'Oreal Pro, but they were all in different capacities. Like some might be like an event. Some might be I'm doing all of your PR strategy. Some might be I'm building your ambassador campaign for your influencer for 2023 or whatever year it was. So just a bunch of different SOWs, a bunch of different clients. Before I get into what I learned from that, I want to speak to how I got that job because I think
Yes.
it's helpful. While I was in my freelancing stage, I was just pitching myself to different companies to work for them full time. I was like obviously interviewing and like applying, but I just like Googled agencies that had beauty clients. And I just messaged the founder of the agency and I was like, hey, this is what I do. This is my experience. I want to work for you. Like, let me know if you're ever hiring.
On LinkedIn or Instagram or where?
I think I
Email?
did it on email. I
Okay.
found their email and I emailed them. And they were very receptive. They were very kind. And we got on a call and just kind of shared about my experience and what I was looking to do. And nothing happened right away. It was a tabled conversation, but it was like a seed out there. And I did that a lot. I think that's a really good tip for anyone applying to jobs is like pitch yourself. And that goes back to me figuring out this is my skill set. This is what I'm good at. I'm creative and I'm an executor. I'm a storyteller and I do this. So get your elevator pitch and pitch yourself to whatever job you want because you never know. This job wasn't even posted. This person wasn't even hiring. And then a few months, maybe 2 or 3 months later, they came back to me and they're like, okay, we have a new client. We have a need for this job. Are you still interested?
That's amazing. So you reached out to them, you did the call, but they were like, okay, we're not hiring yet. But then when they reached out to you.
Yep.
That's incredible.
So I think that's a good tip for anyone because I think the job market, especially right now, can be so discouraging. You can go into the black hole of LinkedIn applications.
Yes.
So I would just always encourage anybody to pitch yourself for the job, reach out to the hiring manager, reach out to whoever you can find because you never know what will come of it. But anyway, all of that to say, then I went back not in-house to the agency and I learned so much from that. I really got to sharpen my skills in so many areas because I was doing traditional PR, I was doing events, I was doing influencer one-off campaigns, I was doing building out strategic like year-long campaigns. And I also think working on the agency side and working face-to-face with clients is such a skill. I would recommend that everybody go agency for a little bit because you get so good at what you do and you learn this like professional acumen that I think sometimes is missed when you've only ever worked in-house. Anybody I've ever like worked with agency side I just know they can do the job. I just know they're so professional. I know that they will figure it out. They will get things done and they will close the loop. They will be like the best employee. And when I've hired people from my team, I've specifically told our HR, I'm like, I want someone from an agency. So all of that to say, I got a ton of great experience through that and really like sharpened my skill set. And it was really useful for me. I knew I wanted to go back in-house because I wanted to advocate for one brand and tell one brand's story and really see the fruits of my labor for one brand. But the agency experience really helped me get there.
Yeah, it's so interesting that I get to hear different guests share about experience in agency. And so many say the same thing of just, it's hard. It's really hard, is what I've heard, but you learn so much and you have to be so agile and adaptable and do so many different things and manage so many different deadlines and projects that it really builds such a strong skill set.
Yeah. And I think if you don't know what you want to do in terms of like specific area, like for example, like I mentioned, I did like 3 different jobs there. And a lot of jobs now, like they're just one, like you're not doing all 3 of those things. Working in an agency is a great way to figure out which one you like the most and be able to strengthen that skill set.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, then that brings us over to ColourPop. Can you share how that role came about?
Yeah, that one was kind of the traditional recruiter story. I was reached out to by a recruiter, and at the time I was like very happy at the agency. I wasn't looking to leave. I really loved my clients and I loved what I was doing. But I was reached out to by a recruiter. And another thing I'll say is always have the conversation unless it's something you're like truly, truly not interested in. But you can build so many relationships just by like having the intro call and understanding what's out there. It's another way to understand what your worth is. So always have the intro call if it's something you're interested in. But I was reached out to by a recruiter, and at first I wasn't that interested because I was happy, but I went through the process anyway, and just really loved the team. And I knew I wanted to go in-house, so I knew that would be a really great step for me professionally. But I even told the recruiter, I was like, I'm happy. You're gonna have to like convince me to take this job. But I ended up getting an offer, and it was a really great offer, and I was really excited to finally go back in-house.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so that brings us full circle to you starting in beauty and refining your way back into beauty. I know a lot of our marketing girlies really aspire to work in beauty marketing. Do you have any advice for women who want to break into that industry?
Totally. Um, I mean, I think there's so many things. One, don't be afraid to cold message people. Like, actually, you should get very comfortable with just messaging people and cold messaging people because you will do it forever. Like, I do it all the time in terms of like trying to get partnerships for ColourPop. Like, I'm sure you've seen a lot of brands when they do influencer trips, they're gifting from other brands as well just to make the experience more exciting. And a lot of that's just cold messaging people from other brands and saying, "Hey, I'm at this brand. We're doing this trip. We think your product would be really fun to gift. Do you want to be a part of it?" And so whether it's in the role, whether it's networking to get coffee with someone who can give you advice on what to do with your career, whether it's reaching out to the hiring manager of a job you just applied to, like just get comfortable cold emailing people and figuring out, like I said, what your strength is. I think another thing is understanding what the brand goal is. As long as I've been in the beauty industry, what I've learned is that every brand is different. Every brand's goal is different. So some brands care so much about keeping their brand story at the center of everything, and they want awareness that doesn't compromise any brand value ever. And that's always the case. So if you're interviewing with a brand like that, you're going to tailor your responses and your strategy to fit that kind of approach. But if you're working for a brand that's really like, we just want to scale, we want to reach people, we want to like reach as many people as possible, and we're okay if the story gets a little diluted within that process because we can bring it back later, know that and speak about how you'll reach the masses and how you will do that. So don't treat every interviewer and every company the same because they're different. So get to know what they want and really think about that as you're talking to them. I'm trying to think what else. I think just like networking, have conversations with people, connect with people, be kind to people. A lot of my industry connections are my old clients, and that I think that just speaks to being good at the agency side and having those clients that you respect and that you can even maintain relationships with far past working with them. So yeah.
Those are amazing. Incredible. Okay. The other thing, I actually wanted to ask you this earlier and I forgot, but ColourPop is so known for their partnerships. I feel like if I think of one beauty brand that
So many
kills
partnerships.
partnerships, like ColourPop is like queen. Do you have one that's like a favorite that you worked on while your time at ColourPop?
That's a great question. I'm like thinking back. We do so many all the time. Actually, I think my favorite is probably our Twilight collection
I saw that
because
one.
like I love like Twilight. I'm not like a twihard, but everyone loved it so much, and it's so fun to have a collection that people are just like going bananas over. Like I think they've all sold out fairly quickly, and people ask about them all the time. People always are still asking for the collections and the palettes.
Do you bring any back that you've done? Have you ever like done a collab collection and then re-brought it back?
We did a series of Twilight. So we did Twilight,
Okay.
and then we did whichever movie is after that. And we've done things like that before. we restock them sometimes, but it gets a little bit hard with like the licensing and
Yeah.
like the term that you have. But yeah, Twilight was really fun because so many people love it so much. Oh my gosh, and it was so funny. It this is like industry insight. When you're doing something like a Twilight collection, you don't have access to the actors in Twilight. You only have access to like the Twilight IP. And when we launched one of our Twilight collections, Taylor Lautner, the girl, like posted on TikTok and was like, ColourPop launched this Twilight collection and my husband's face is on it. What do I have to do to get one? And it's so funny because we like would have loved to be able to get that to her, but we have to go through like the IP, then we have to go through the talent agents, and like sometimes it just gets lost in the mix of conversations and it doesn't get through to them. And so seeing that, I had so many friends texting me being like, did you see this? And I'm like, yes, we're trying to get in touch with them.
Were you able to give her a palette?
Yes,
Okay,
we
good.
gave her some, and then we gave her some to give away as well. But
She's
it's
so
always funny. It was so funny. I loved that she posted that, and she wasn't
Yes.
like being mean or anything.
No.
It was just funny. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I promise we tried. We didn't like not think about her.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Yeah, I just think because ColourPop always does these like nostalgic collaborations too, which I feel like brings back memories of like obviously Twilight is not something new, but getting to kind of like relive some of that excitement and do it in a really fun way through makeup is just so special.
I know. And so many other brands are doing that so well now too. It's so much fun, but we're all always trying to think like what's another collab we can do that'll be really fun? Like, are people gonna like this? Like, are people gonna like this?
Yeah.
But we definitely have that like nostalgic fan base, which is always really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We've chatted about so many different things within beauty and PR and influencer and marketing. I know I asked you if you have any advice for marketing girlies who want to break into beauty, but do you have any last things that you want to share with the marketing girlies?
I think just actually two things. One, be patient, but work hard. Like, pitch yourself, do what you got to do, get your name out there, but it probably won't happen overnight. And just trust the process. You will get there. And then what was the other one I was going to say? I think I lost it. Be patient, work hard. I don't remember the other one. Do that.
Those are two great ones. I think those are two. So those count as two.
Yeah, it'll take time. You'll get where you want to go, and just like, it's not that serious, and just have fun doing it and stay on top of the trends, and don't be afraid to throw ideas out there and be seen.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on Marketing Girly and being an absolutely amazing guest. It's been so much fun chatting with you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.